We lied to you because, of course, we lied to you. We're giving you a Christmas Eve episode. That's how this is going to work. No episode on Christmas. We're going to give you a Christmas Eve episode. If you like hit that fever point in Christmas Eve where it's like, I need an hour to myself, go lock yourself in your room and listen to us. Jack, our I'm Just Baseball show. Today is December 24th. As always, it is brought to you by BetMGM. While we were snoozing, I got kind of canceled, but then also we had like four transactions go through that helped shape the offseason, and they were big deals, man. I mean, late at night and then early morning between Sunday and Monday. We're going to talk about that, and we owe you playing GM for the Mets and Phillies. So we are going to do that. How we doing, dude? Good?
Doing good, doing good. Our job got even easier overnight with the Mets making another move. There's not much GM to be played really left, but there's some subtle things here and there. But I think for the most part, not a ton again to be done. So it's more of a conversation and what are some of the small things that could be shored up.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. I like the pace of this offseason, man. Or like, yeah, we had the flurry of moves and in the winter meetings and all that good stuff, but I feel like we haven't had a stretch of like 5 days with nothing happening. It feels like we're still, yeah, every few days still getting some good stuff.
And it could be something minor, or it could be like Sean Manaea going back to the team that he experienced a career rejuvenation with. And we're going to talk about Manaea in a moment. He kind of sort of had a teammate, Aram, in 2024, but not really. And we were thinking he would have a teammate in 2025, but no, not yet. Do you want to explain why you got canceled?
It's funny, honestly. Like I thought I would get beat up worse than I did. So yeah, we talked about it last episode. So for those, I know that we have like plenty of listeners who are not on Twitter, which is probably a good thing.
Hmm.
So they may have missed this whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I essentially was pretty positive that Alex Reyes, the Alex Reyes, the
Yeah.
All-Star,
In
six-time,
2021. Yeah, the
I
five
think
pitch mix closer.
six-time top 100 prospect.
Wow.
I think by Baseball Prospectus, I think he was like at least five different times he was on their top 100 or top 101. It's just been injuries for him, right? Like a bunch of like multiple shoulder surgeries, Tommy John, and it's unfortunate because when we did see him back on the mound in a big league setting in 2021, he was an all-star as a closer for the Cardinals. And then he signed with the Dodgers in 2023. It was like a $1 million deal, but he never ended up throwing in a game setting because he ended up needing to undergo shoulder surgery again, unfortunately. So we didn't see or hear from him in 2024. And it makes sense. He was recovering from shoulder surgery. I'm sure
Yep.
he wanted some time to just kind of get himself right, mentally and physically. And, maybe he didn't even want to pitch anymore at that point. You never know. But turns out there was some interest in that. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to like start this. But essentially, I reported that Alex Reyes had signed a deal with the Mets a week ago.
Yeah.
And the reason why was, well, and then we'll also say, I reported that it got way more legs than I thought. I've been reporting minor league deals this offseason. That's why you guys have been joking, like Scoops McClayton, Lake Tonic Bomb, all that good stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's ironic because they're all small deals. They're not that big of a deal. And it's like fun to just report on the interesting minor league deals here and there that I can scoop up and find.
Okay, now counterpoint. Alex Reyes was going to get traction because that's a name that carries gravity in the baseball world because he
Yeah.
was a 5 or 6 time top 100 prospect. And like David Bodie was a name that caught fire because everybody remembers that grand slam on Sunday Night Baseball. Like that's the thing. There can be fun minor league deals where it's like, I remember that guy, Alex
Yeah.
Reyes. I thought he was the truth for a minute. He's not. He signed a minor league deal with the Mets, or so we thought.
Or well, he did but didn't, and so I report on it, gets a ton of traction, and people are really excited about it. And then um Manny Gomez of NewJersey.com, which I appreciate him clarifying all this, but he,
Yeah.
he quote tweets it and goes, this isn't true. I have multiple sources. Not true. Why am I the person that has to like clean up all of these false reports? I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. What did
Um,
I
I,
do?
last thing I want to do is just put out some false reports. Like, let me figure out what the deal is here. Um, it turns out Alex Reyes signed a deal in February, like this past February, so almost a full year ago. He signed a letter of agreement with the Mets, and nobody in the baseball world knew about it. It was not reported anywhere, right? I had known about the mutual interest between Reyes and the Mets. I had been waiting to see if he would get activated because there had been continued mutual interest, and there was apparently agreements to terms, things like that. Didn't have an exact timeline on it. I was made aware that he was activated. So I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. They must have ironed out the agreement and it's all good to go. He was activated. So right when he was activated, I said, okay, I'm going to report on this. And so I did. Again, I knew that there was mutual interest. I knew that there had been some verbal agreement at some point, and I was like, okay, well, if he's activated, he's good to go.
Yeah.
Didn't think anything of it. So then when Manny Gomez made that clarification, I'm like, oh shoot, what did I miss here? Whatever. I do some more digging. I reach out to some people. It turns out that he was activated to be released, which is a formality. But how can he be released if no one ever knew that he was a Met?
Right.
So that's where I dug deeper, and I found some new things out. So there's two agreements that you sign as a player. There's when you agree to a deal, there's just I guess, the term sheet,
Letter of agreement. Yeah.
with a letter of agreement. And then there's the universal player contract,
Yeah. The UPC.
the UPC. And what happened was Reyes signed the letter of agreement, but didn't sign the UPC, which I don't think has ever been done in the history of the league.
Like, it's the same sitting. You can do it in 5 seconds.
You could legitimately knock them both out. But he signed one. Then, understandably, I mean, he's been through so much. I'm sure there was a moment where it was real again. It's like, I don't know if I want to get back out there, given the last time he tried to make that comeback, his arm went on him again. So I understand it from that perspective. But for me, I was like, once he was activated, I'm like, okay, they clearly ironed out everything else. What happened is he had never signed the UPC, which is the official contract that puts you, actually onto a team and all that good stuff. So by just signing the agreement and not the universal player contract, he technically belonged to his rights belong to the Mets, but he can't play for them. And there was still that mutual interest in that time. But what happens if you sign one but not the other? You just get put on the restricted list. So he was just on the restricted list. But again, nobody knew. Like, nobody knew about this signing. So he was on the restricted list for 8 months, and then he was activated a week ago.
Yeah.
And when he was activated, I was like, bang, they finally made it happen. But it turns out the activation was a formality to just release him from that initial agreement, since he never signed the UPC. And there's still interest between the two parties, by the way, which is the craziest part. So I learned something new. And when is Alex Becker? Is that who?
John Becker.
John Becker, excuse me. Sorry about that. When John Becker doesn't totally know what's going on, he's the mastermind, or one of the masterminds behind roster resource at Fangraphs. Yeah. When he was like, this makes no sense, that made me feel a little bit better. I issued an apology, explained the whole thing. I was expecting to get crushed. Everyone in the replies was like, I never knew about this.
Hell, I get it.
And I got some messages from people in the industry that I've looked up to for a long time, and just saying don't sweat it. That was a really weird situation, and it really meant a lot. I learned a lot from it, but the true learning lesson is, though, you got to quadruple check and be 100% sure. But even then, I think this one, something like this, could have slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
But it is a nice reminder for future of always double, triple checking. Because, I think I was feeling myself a little bit. I was 10 for 10 on the minor league reports. And so maybe I was trending towards skirting and kind of cutting corners on the reporting side of things. And this is a nice reminder in a way that I'm not going to get crushed, that, don't get comfortable, but even on the minor league deals. But yeah, that was, I felt bad too, because I could imagine Alex Reyes, the last thing I would want to do is have people texting him hey, welcome back, and he's not
no,
throwing. And that's that's where I really thought about it first and foremost. And then then I thought, okay, people are gonna hate me now. But no, it was just a really wild thing. I've never heard of. I didn't know that there was an agreement, and then the UPC. It was funny because Griffin was coming over to get dinner. And we were about to go, and he's like, what are you so stressed about? And I explained it to him, and like, he didn't even know there was two contracts.
Oh, he
And like,
probably just signed the two sheets of paper in front of him
yeah,
and was like,
he's a
okay.
major leaguer. He had no idea. So I was like, yeah, like it's wild.
Dude, you called me in the Philly airport and I was like sitting there and you were explaining to me what was happening and I was like, maybe it could have been the fumes from the Panda Express at E16, but I was like starting to get a headache. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like just say you're sorry and like move on with life. But I mean the fact that there's a document that nobody and again, you put a million baseball fans in the room, ranging from diehards to casuals. I don't know if two know what a UPC is, and there
No,
might be five people.
it created an amazing discourse
Yeah,
around that whole side of things. And then Anthony DeComo,
yeah.
the Mets beat writer for MLB.com, then also just came out and said some clarity on this whole thing. Um, he said, clearing up some reporting I've seen on Alex Reyes and the Mets, which is just so funny to have a domino effect of that. Reyes, who hasn't appeared in a professional game since 2021, was in New York this past season on a minor league deal. He never wound up pitching for an affiliate and was released. And all the replies are like, wait, when was he a Met? How did nobody know about this?
So he like it was something like, what is the last line of that tweet? He is still a free agent or something.
Yeah.
Do you see it? He is
Yeah. Yeah.
still a
Yeah.
free agent, and then the first reply is, so he's not a member of the Mets, and then he replied to that, he is still a free agent.
Yep. Yep. And then somebody replied, like, how bored do you have to be to make up a minor league signing? I,
It
I
wasn't
was
made
told he
up.
was
It wasn't
activated.
made up.
I'm
It was
not
a
going to make anything
transaction.
up.
I hear you. I hear you. I you mentioned John. The two people that I take their word as gospel contractually are Ethan Houlihan, who does great work. He's in the Pittsburgh area. I really only see his stuff on Twitter, and then John Becker, of course, at Fangraphs, does an amazing job. And he quote tweeted Anthony's tweet. And you mentioned this is what John said. I've been doing this, parentheses, what this is exactly, I don't know. Which was like, that's funny. For over a decade, and I cannot recall this ever happening. Him having been signed for 2024 isn't even on his MLB page when you look at transactions. And then he said, if Alex Reyes is in the Mets org, but nobody was around to hear the transaction happen, does it make a sound? Like that's exactly what happened here. So you could have quintuple checked this and you're not getting it. Like
No.
I don't blame you one bit. So it's funny. And then John followed with, this is just me being pedantic, but this is only a topic I and like five other people can be pedantic about, so I'm going to be. But a letter of agreement, same as a term sheet, wouldn't make someone a member of the org. Only a UPC does. So like
Well, and so clearly there's still confusion on that because like Tacoma said he was part of the org, but then another report from NewJersey.com was that he never signed the UPC. He only signed the term like letter of agreement term sheet. So no one still, I think, completely knows
no
what
one
happened.
knows. And if you wanted, if you wanted to start Christmas Eve with 10 minutes of contract talk and actual contract structure and language, you got it.
Yeah, well, just and at my expense. So that part was fun,
Get
but
wrecked,
again,
loser.
it was nice to see people not totally crush me for that one. So
Yeah,
we
100%.
survived.
But I'm getting crushed for an engagement tweet, so it's okay.
Yeah,
Um,
your phrasing. We talked about it last episode, but you know, you
phrasing,
get
just
quote
I
tweeted
have
by
to
a
be better.
weirdo NBA account, and all of a sudden you get a lot of weirdos coming in.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that this guy unfortunately can't hold a job because of his personal opinions, and then he just goes after me. But you know what? Godspeed, and that's a basketball guy taking baseball contract lingo. I just want to clear up for people. I love my fiance, and I plan to be with her forever. So we can roll with that if you want. Another marriage that's working very well, and I'm reusing that transition from the Mike Soroka thing yesterday. But I could do. Like Alex Reyes would have had Sean Manaea as a teammate and anything like that. But the official transaction, the first official transaction that I want to talk about is Sean Manaea is back with the New York Mets. It's what, 3 years, $75 million for Manaea? It's 25 a year. Great payday for him. And that reunion is perfect. They needed pitching badly. And we
Yep.
were trying to forecast a way to like get them involved in some pitching markets and this helps him out big time. This reunion is it couldn't be better. Like there was not a better scenario for any free agent and that team.
And it just makes so much sense for both parties. I agree. Like this is where it clicked for him. This is where he's had the most success really he's had as a major leaguer, and kind of solidified the adjustment that he had made. And I know it started a little bit earlier than that, but really hit it home, over the course of a full season. Why go anywhere else? It worked. And, I think when you look at what the Mets have going on now, they needed another impact arm, right? Like I like some of the pieces they have there. Like I think a healthy Kodai Senga this year is going to be solid. But then, and I like David Peterson and Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas as arms, in the equation. Probably
Yep.
Montas the least of the
Right.
group there, but those are fine starters. But again, like you think about a playoff series, and you also just think about matching up every fifth day. You want to feel like you have an advantage, and I think you wouldn't always have an advantage with those three on the bump, depending on how good Clay Holmes looks. But with Manaea and Kodai Senga on the bump, there's a lot of days where you're going to have an advantage there. And I just think having a guy that can go six shutty, when he's on with 8, 9 Ks, like that's what you want. And I think other than Kodai Senga, when he's healthy and dialed in, like I think you'd be kind of stretched thin to figure out who that next person could be in that rotation. So just another impact arm there I think makes a huge, huge difference and really elevates this staff. You hope that Christian Scott can get back at some point before the end of the season and also bolster that staff. But I think now you just look at the bullpen, and I think that's the only area that could maybe be addressed a little bit more. But if they're sliding, Blackburn now into more of a swingman role, I feel much better about that.
Yeah.
And it just gives them a lot more, I think, to work with there.
Yeah, I think so too. And they, not like they needed frontline help, but you can pile up twos like this. I think Manaea is fully worth 25 a year over the next 3 years
Oh
because he
yeah,
found something. Before, honestly, even the back half of 2024, I would not have said that. But I think what he proved after the All Star break, and of course in the postseason when all eyes were on him, what he proved is that this change worked for him. And the change that we're talking about is leaning more and more into the crossfire delivery. His delivery looked different than it did in any previous season of his major league
by
career.
a lot.
And he's just turning the sliders up on weird. It's not like he was turning the sliders up on stuff. He was not throwing as hard as he ever was. It's not like his, breaking balls were as sharp as they ever were. His delivery was just as unorthodox as it ever was. And he found the right slot. We talk about guys reinventing themselves as sidearmers all the time. And that's been around since the 90s. Like, there are plenty of guys that, have been over the top that have tried, a sidearm delivery or a knuckleball as a last ditch effort to, you know, rejuvenate their career. With Manaea, it's not like he was a dead man walking, but he saw an opportunity to make a slight tweak that still felt natural, that could elevate him to a place that he was previously at when he was, maybe in his early 20s and he was first bursting onto the scene with Oakland, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And he made a tweak that felt natural that just freaking worked. Good for him.
Yeah, and the willingness to adjust. Like again, I think you bring up a great point where you're around for a while. Maybe you're not. You feel like you might not be fully tapping into your ceiling, but it's a little intimidating to make a change at 31 years old and really totally adjust your delivery like that. But Manaea just being open and willing to do so, like it's cool to see that pay dividends for him and then some with this payday here. And also, I mean, what he was able to do for them through the postseason up until literally he ran out of gas. He just had nothing left in the tank because he had thrown so many innings compared to anything we've ever really seen from him. I love seeing a 6'5", 245-pound lefty leaning into the weird. And,
Yeah.
I think the big thing that you can look at is you mentioned like not jumping velocity wise or anything like that. Opponents, and his fastball has always been pretty effective, but it was different the way that he used it. Opponents had like a 740 OPS, a 245 or 247 batting average against his fastball in 2023. And just by changing the slot, and it was actually a little bit slower this past year, opponents at 202 with a 630 OPS against it. So it wasn't anything drastic, yeah, like a major uptick or anything like that. It was just changing the angle, allowing him to locate better and just making it more difficult for hitters in general to pick it up and square it up and made all the difference in the world. If your fastball has, if you shave 100 plus OPS points off your fastball, you're going to end up in a pretty good spot. And that's exactly what we saw.
Yep. Deferrals. Deferred money. What,
Yeah, wait,
23?
crazy. I thought that the CBA mandated that only the Dodgers could defer payment, but turns out, according to Will Salmon, of I think it's also the Athletic. Yeah, the Athletic. Deferred amount is 23.25 million. It's a 10-year
Uh-oh.
deferral into 2035.
Good for Manaea getting paid once he's done. I think deferred money is perfect when you're getting, a figure this large. But yeah, I thought it was in the CBA that only the Dodgers could offer defer money and then only Atlanta could offer pre-arb extensions, right?
Yeah, yeah. Only Atlanta can. Yeah.
So, you know what? It's okay. Other teams can be contractually smart like this. How about an offer that is essentially identical to the QO for our guy Walker Buehler? Bueller is a Boston Red Sox. We'll talk about the actual on-field fit, but I thought the exact figure was fascinating because it was a conversation whether Walker was going to get the qualifying offer from the Dodgers. He ended up not, and the Red Sox signed him for 1 year, 21.05, which is an identical figure to the QO. He has incentives to push it past the QO. But this is essentially the Red Sox using the qualifying offer on a guy that didn't get it from his previous team. In terms of on field stuff, I thought this was awesome, and I'm going to find who tweeted it, but it was just postseason starts by guys in the rotation in Boston. And I think everybody else in that starting rotation for the Red Sox has two combined postseason starts. Walker has 18. He's the vet of this rotation now. And dude, like he said he's a problem now in that conversation with Mookie, and I'm fully buying into it. It was his four seamer that did him in at points in the regular season. I don't think he's going to entirely scrap it. We talked about that with him, but I mean, dude, like I couldn't think of a better fit for him. That wasn't Dodger blue.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think if he's leaving LA, that is as good of a fit as any. And I imagine, with how cerebral Walker is, and this is a 1-year deal and an opportunity for him to keep that momentum from the postseason and get himself an even bigger payday in free agency next year. But with how cerebral he is, sure, a lot of teams were lining up to give him a similar offer, and it really came down to philosophy. And I think, like, how do you think I fit in? And what are your thoughts Arsenal wise? What did you like from what I saw in the postseason? Like, I imagine if the Red Sox, I don't think a team out there is going to put together a much better pitch in terms of this. You did this really well. Like, we think that if you do this or that, you can level yourself back up to being that 9-figure arm. I imagine that Walker was, and I can't wait to ask him about it and talk to him about it next time he comes on the show, because we always talk about now how pitching centric and how advanced the pitching minds are in that Red Sox front office.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that played a part in Walker gravitating towards there. And clearly he figured a lot of things out at the end of the season, but just someone like him being able to have a sounding board. I'm imagining, he hasn't had a ton. LA has some of the brightest minds as well, but
Yeah.
in the baseball world, I don't think there's a ton of pitching minds that match Walker Bueller's understanding of pitching. So I'm sure that was a part of this whole thing. And yeah, I think Boston is probably as close to that as any organization at this point in terms of a place where he can, it can be a meeting of the minds.
Yeah, it's also an opportunity for him to essentially reclaim a lot of that, gravity that comes with Walker Bueller. And, I'm looking at the 2026 free agent class. I don't know if Michael King is in here, but there's a chance that Walker is a top five starting pitcher in next year's free agent class. Like Framber Valdez is in there, Dylan Cease is in there. Shota has a mutual option, so I assume he'll hit the open market, and then Gallen. Like after that,
Yeah.
it might be Walker Bueller, which is
Yeah.
great. And he's betting on himself. He's betting on him feeling a year better, honestly, and just like being around those people that can help optimize his arsenal for who he is now as a 29, 30-year-old guy. He's also like, there was no chance he was going to a mid-level market or a low
No,
market. Like
no. This guy
this
needs to
guy, it
he
was
needs to pitch where it matters. And the Red Sox have made it clear that 2025 matters.
yeah. If you're not in L.A., he was going to be in New York. He was going to be in Boston. He was going to be in Philly. He was going to be in Atlanta. He was going to be somewhere that he's pitching in front of a packed house. And if Boston is running out Crochet, Bueller, Hauk at the front of their rotation, feels really good. I don't know if they're done yet, but if they are, I still feel a hell of a lot better going into 25 than I did 24.
a lot better. And then they might be done. And honestly, I think that might be okay.
Yeah,
Because you remember you're gonna have Sandoval coming back next year as well, or maybe at the very, very end of the year. Like they've got a lot of arms in the fold all of a sudden. And then I love the depth that they have now too. With Richard Fitz still has some intrigue as a back end arm if someone goes down. Quinn Priester looks like another guy that they've kind of helped
of
optimize a
course.
little bit and looks like he could be a back end arm. So all of a sudden, this paper thin rotation has some depth and some star power to it as well. And I do want to give the Red Sox and Craig Breslow credit here. The way that they navigated this offseason is has been really impressive. You get Crochet without parting with your top guys. You still give up a haul, but you're able to retain your top prospects. Then you also you give Nick Pivetta the QO, which we were all like, "Whoa,
Yeah, I was
great
gonna say
decision."
yes. Yeah,
Great decision. He didn't say yes somehow. So now they are going to get a draft pick back for Nick Pivetta and then signed Walker Buehler, who I'd rather have personally,
yes,
for the exact QO amount, essentially. I think incentives will bring it up and we'll find out more about those incentives.
yeah.
But basically, they got Walker Buehler for the QO and then got a draft pick once Nick Pivetta signs
Right.
for offering the QO to Pivetta, which I think that might end up coming back to bite Pivetta. But great read by the Red Sox. Like they
Mm-hmm.
knew that Pivetta was going to decline it.
Yeah.
So it worked out. Like think about the Dodgers. The Dodgers were a little bit apprehensive and decided not to give Walker the QO. They could have and would have recouped a pick if he didn't take it. Maybe he would have taken it. Who knows?
Yeah.
But again, that's the game you got to play a little bit. So the Red Sox, they get a pitcher of equal, if not more value. I'd lean to more value, especially with the postseason side of
Of
things with
course.
Walker. And then they also get a draft pick. Like this worked out really well. And since there was no QO attached to Bueller, they don't lose a draft pick for signing him.
Yeah.
Red Sox have maneuvered this offseason masterfully.
Yeah.
I have to say, like this is a different front office, and they also have money to work with now, which is nice. That always helps. And we were critical of Heim at times, but also Heim was dealt a shittier hand because for whatever reason at that time, Fenway Sports Group didn't want to spend as much.
Heim built them a good hand, and Breslow is working with a good hand now,
Yeah,
and he's making it better. Like,
yeah,
give some credit to Heim Bloom,
you
please. I
got
know
to.
that you're right. I know that we clowned him a lot, but at the end of the day, like he left the Red Sox in, given financial constraints, a better place than how he found it, in a better
Yeah,
state than how he found it. And I'm sure he's going to do the same thing with St. Louis. It just doesn't look like how the casual baseball fan wants it to look
no,
because all those guys want it to look like big league success.
no. And I think Heim is really good in that role. I always wonder how he's going to do in that primary role, which he's about to take over for Mozeliak in a year. Like, I think the only things that he left that weren't, a benefit for the next person in line and Craig Breslow was the big moves that he tried to make, right? Not that it's a total travesty because he could end up playing for them, but I think they'd want to do over on it. Like Trevor Story contract, probably would rather not have that. And the Yoshida contract at this point, probably would rather not have that. So those are the two where it's like those are the big moves though, right? Like
Yeah.
especially when you're a little bit limited financially at that time,
Yeah.
probably not where you want to splash the cash. And that's the one area where it'll be interesting to see if Heim can shore that up at, in St. Louis, who they're going to have financial constraints too,
Yeah.
apparently now over the next couple of years. But the one thing he will do is rebuild that farm and get them in a pretty good spot. We'll just see how he does on the free agent side once they finally allow him to do so.
Yep. Holiday season, a lot of families are together. One of my best friends from high school, George Brennan, does not listen to this show, but his younger sister, Martha, doesn't miss an episode. She listens to this show religiously, and they are big Red Sox fans. And she, who was not a big baseball fan at all before listening to this show, texted George and their mom in all caps, Walker Buehler to the Red Sox, woo, with 10 exclamation points. So shout out Martha for being a very loyal listener. George, get better. Listen to us every day. But that was a very funny text to get. Like, a lot of people are really fired up. And I know that our guy Ben Bellotti is very fired up. And Christian Crespo is going to make the journey down to Boston to see Walker pitch. And we got to get him to a Celtics game. I'm trying to coordinate that right now. Let's go to Texas here. Joc Pederson is a Texas Ranger. And that on the heels of trading Nate Lowe, this roster makes a lot of sense now. I'm really excited for this. 2-year, $37 million deal with a player option after the 2025 season. This essentially guarantees that Jake Burger's the first baseman, right? And Joc is the DH. Dude, like, this lineup is going to be fun, fun, fun.
Yeah. I I love it. And what's funny is in yesterday's episode, we were talking about it and it was like I thought the Nathaniel Lowe trade was more of just clearing up some more wiggle room for the money that was already spent. I didn't think it was to clear up money to spend more, given the constraints that we thought that they were going to have. And it seems like, ownership is ponied up, which is nice, and said, "Hey, let's push this thing forward and make it happen." They go out and trade for Jake Burger. He's on the minimum, and then and you have 3 more years of control after this coming season, and they'll just be hitting ARB1 after this coming year. And then to allocate that money towards a Joc Pederson, who I think is really going to elevate them offensively from the left side, especially. Like, I really think this is exactly how you'd want to see it go if you're a Rangers fan. And I know, like, it's sad to see Nathaniel Lowe go because I think there's a lot of emotional attachment there. Also, just a great guy,
Yeah.
story, and just so many wrinkles there. But from just a pure baseball standpoint, this gives them, I think, more offensive upside, and I think makes them a lot deeper in terms of, if you're talking about Berger and Joc Pederson versus just Nathaniel Lowe, the power upside just in general, I think the length lineup wise that it can give you, because you can start both those guys in certain spots. Like, I love where they're at, and their bench is pretty good all of a sudden now too, where instead of Leody Taveras playing a lot of ball games, he's going to be kind of that fourth outfielder. There'll be some days where you roll out Langford, Carter, and Taveras, though, and to mix and match in certain ways. And in those days, you're going to have one of the most elite defensive outfields in the game. Duran is a super utility guy on the bench. Like, it all works together really nicely. A little bit more bullpen reinforcement, and I'm all in on these Rangers. I love where they're at.
So catching tandem is Hyman Higgy, Berger at first, Semien at second, Seager at short, Young at third with Josh Smith filling in. The outfield left to right could be Langford, Evan Carter, Adolis Garcia. Jock is the DH, and then that bench is Josh Smith, Ezekiel Duran, Higgy, and Leody Taveras. Top blank lineup in Major League Baseball.
Oof. Let's think about that. Let's think about that. I mean, what lineups are you taking over that? Dodgers, obviously.
Dodgers, Atlanta, a healthy Atlanta I'm taking.
Healthy Atlanta. Phillies.
It's close.
With Kepler now, and I know that's not like a major needle mover, but it is. Yeah, again, the Castellanos Kepler platoon, I'm on board with here.
But for the sake of the exercise, let's count it. So Philly, 3. Um, I would think the Yankees are a conversation to be had.
I would go Rangers over Yankees, but I think it's a conversation to be had for sure.
San Diego, I'd probably side with Texas's lineup over San Diego's.
Depends on who they bring back, because Profar's, potentially losing Profar definitely hurts given what he did for them last year. Kim is not going to light it up offensively, but he is a solid bat. They also lost Higgy. It's top 5, I think, because of those teams that we mentioned, I think you're going to take them over one of the Phillies or, like the Royals are too thin. Like, I'm looking at, it's not just like top end talent, it's the length now, and even the bench that they have now. All of a sudden, it's a lot of different ways that they can mix and match. The Mets aren't there yet, even with Soto. I love it. If they bring back Pete Alonso and maybe add one more bat, I could see it.
Yeah,
but I think right now it's a clear cut top 5 offense. I think you can't sleep on the Red Sox offense either, though.
Yeah,
especially if they end up not moving Casas and just with what they've got there, and then you add a Roman Anthony in there. But I still think it's top 5 or right on the fringe of top 5.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
And they get that DeGrom guy throwing for hopefully a full season as well.
You get DeGrom for a whole season. You just brought Eovaldi back. And then you've got Gray, Malley, Bradford as the slated 3, 4, and 5. But don't forget about Leiter, Kumar, Rocker, and possibly Emiliano Teodo in short time.
Rocker's in that rotation.
Rocker's in the opening day rotation. I think Leiter's in the opening day rotation too, but you're paying Gray and Malley a lot of money. So it probably has to just be Kumar and Leiter is waiting. And Teodo is disgusting. Like, get excited, Rangers fans.
And that's a guy that could absolutely help answer the bullpen side. And that's what I love about where the Rangers are at in the pitching development side of things. Like, Leiter could also go into the bullpen and be lights out for this coming season. And then next year, or like for 2026, they could transition him back into the rotation as Malley and these other guys come off the book. So that could also be the way they go about it. They have a lot of options. They're in a good spot.
Yep. Last transaction that we got to talk about before we get to playing GM. This can be quick. Andrew McCutchen is back with Pittsburgh. I was not looking at the Pirates whatsoever, like without penciling in McCutchen to the DH spot. And here we are. It's just confirmed. You knew it was going to happen. It's like Kershaw. Kershaw's not going anywhere else. McCutchen was never going anywhere else. Andrew McCutchen is back with the Pirates. It makes a lot of sense. Harmony, order is restored on the North Shore.
Yeah, I mean that there was no other team where that was going to make sense.
No.
So I'm glad that they made that happen. Like, and he still has something left, right? Like he hit
Mm-hmm.
20 home runs last year. His 739 OPS. He's going to hit lefties at the very least, and he's going to be a guy that gets people to the ballpark. I'm on milestone watch here. I don't know if there's anything that jumps out in particular from a milestone perspective. So that was the one thing I was hoping. I'm like, oh, maybe he can hit a cool number. Nothing crazy, just a lot of really big numbers. Like he said, yeah, he's going to hit 2,200. He's going to get to 2,200 hits potentially,
Yeah.
but it's not really a major milestone. But 319 homers, man, like an 829 career OPS. What a career he's had, and it's cool to see him tack onto the numbers a little bit more and in the place where he's supposed to be.
Yep. And I do think he ends up in Cooperstown. Check out the mug this morning, by the way. I do think he ends up in Cooperstown, and he will be
Really?
wearing a Pirates hat, which is great. And it's awesome that he's going to end his career there.
You think he goes to Cooperstown?
I think he goes to Cooperstown.
I hope so, but I don't know. I
Hey,
don't know.
where's the war?
The war? Where we go, F war or B war?
Let's go B war for the sake.
Yeah,
I
B
feel
war is
like,
more for the Hall of Fame,
yeah, I
right?
feel like all these writers are looking at B war.
49.3. I think he's shy, buddy.
Man, but like he's just so important to that franchise.
I agree. I agree. Look, I think he's got a special case for like, yeah, I think Jersey retired in
Oh
Pittsburgh,
yeah, 22's getting retired.
but it might be tough. Give me 3 more years of these 20 home runs and maybe he can get to
He'll
400.
spend 10 years on the ballot. I feel pretty
I hope we'll stay on the ballot. That I could see. It's just crazy. He really did like taper off after age 30. And
yeah.
he hung around and still
But dude, those 20s were so fun.
when nobody was hitting too. His timing was terrible. Like in terms of his peak was when offense was at like an all-time low.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it even more amazing. But yeah, 4 straight years of top five MVP finishes
Yep.
and an MVP.
Yep. So Kutch is back in the Berg. We're going to get to the Phillies and the Mets in a moment. Before that, quick break. I think this is the easier one, and these are definitely two of the easier ones that we have because both of these teams have been very active this offseason. But I want to start with the Philadelphia Phillies here in the Playing GM episode because the Phillies are, again, a near flawless baseball team. They're spending a lot of money to be a near flawless baseball team. Their final 24 payroll was 248 million. Their estimated 2025 payroll 285 million. You want to talk about the second apron in the NBA? We're kind of all about our baseball to basketball contract conversations today. So,
Mhm.
248 to 285. Here's what's happened so far. They have lost Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, Spencer Turnbull to free agency. They non-tendered Austin Hayes. They signed Cody Stashak and Nick Vespi to minor league deals. They traded Scott Kingery to the Angels for cash. They selected Mike Vassell in the Rule 5. They traded him to Tampa for cash. They acquired my favorite minor league reliever, Devin Sweet from Detroit, for cash. I think he's a big league reliever. They signed Jordan Romano after he was non-tendered by Toronto, 1 year, $8.5 million. They
Which, by the
signed,
way, was
yeah,
was more than what the contract would have been tendered to him for.
correct. I think it would be
So
like 5.9 or something that Toronto would
yeah,
owe him.
attaboy Ross Atkins.
Yeah,
Keep going,
brutal.
baby.
Brutal, man. They also signed Max Kepler 1 year, $10 million. And then the big news from over the weekend, they acquire lefty Jesus Luzardo and minor league catcher Paul McIntosh from the Marlins for Starlene Caba, the shortstop prospect, and Amarion Boyd, the outfield prospect. That's where we stand right now. Lineup or staff first?
I mean, I don't think there's much to do to the lineup, so
I don't
um,
think so. We'll
I
run
don't
it
think
through.
anything.
Real Muto, Garrett Stubbs, Marshawn, and PMAC are the catching quartet right now. Marshawn and PMAC are going to be in Lehigh Valley. Real Muto is getting older, but there's nothing you can do for 2025.
No, they said that they want to cut down his usage a little bit,
Yeah,
which makes sense. But then that means you're upping Garrett Stubbs' usage, which I know is he's a great vibes guy.
yeah,
But I mean,
it's whatever.
uh, yeah, like that's the one thing. But I think getting McIntosh in this deal as well is just another like insurance policy. I think he is probably a better option than Marshawn and
Yeah,
like could be. But yeah, that's the only area where I was like, okay, maybe you upgrade the backup catcher spot, but they brought back Stubbs, and that is what it is. The only area where I look at and I'm like, I think you could maybe do a little something is center field, but I think they're going to give Rojas another year here, and I think it's important to note like Johan Rojas is 24 years old.
yeah,
And, I think he showed some really good things as a 22-year-old and then late in the season and all that good stuff. But then there was a little bit of I think him getting exposed, a guy that's an aggressive swinger, and it was a rough year for him last year. He's torn it up this year in the Winter League in the Lidom. Like looks
yeah,
great out there, and it's hard to hit in the Lidom. And I think at 24 years old, I think the Phillies want to give him maybe another year. And I think if he gets off to a slow start, remember he's not going to be playing everyday center field. He's kind of the Robin to Brandon Marsh's Batman in center field, as you
right.
always like to say. Like I I think that's fine for now. And if Marsh is banged up or whatever, and Rojas isn't looking any better, I'm sure they can go out and make a trade for a center fielder. Maybe they'll pony up and go get Robert at that point. But I can understand going into the season and just wanting to wait and see because I mean Rojas is a phenomenal defender. Marsh has shown some good things. He was just banged up last year a little bit, and I think that with how much money they already have tied up, it's not the worst thing in the world to run into this offseason that way, especially after they just upgraded in the other corner as well, right? Like
Yeah,
now that it's not just Castellanos out there every day, now that you've got the Castellanos Kepler platoon potentially, or they're going to end up just having one guy in each corner, whatever it may be.
yeah,
I still think that makes them better overall.
yeah. I think so too. This infield is perfect. I think. Bohm has obviously been the hot button topic for the Phillies. Are they going to trade Bohm? Are they going to trade Bohm? Are they going to trade Bohm? Where is he going? Where's he going? At this point, I would hold Bohm and I would, take some ABs away from him and I would give him to Edmundo Sosa. But Sosa, I think, is best utilized in that hyper utility role where he's playing third, short, second whenever anybody needs a breather. And frankly, like the only guy that would be docked performance wise, Trey Turner could hit 190 and he's playing shortstop every day. Stott could hit 190 and he's providing enough value defensively at second base and on the base paths when he does get on base to warrant an everyday role for him. So Sosa could play 80 games at third base and he can fill in elsewhere when needed. And Bohm could have ABs taken away, but I'd hold Bohm right now.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's what they're gonna do. I think that was like what the reporting around them is now at this point. Like the market, I just don't think teams were jumping out of their chairs to go get, and Alec Boehm, given that it's not like he's on the minimum, and
Yeah.
clearly the Phillies value him more than anybody else did, so it just wasn't gonna happen. I really like the idea of getting more ABs to Sosa. I think Sosa can take pretty much all the left-handed at bats. I think you should take most of the left-handed at bats away from Stott, who had a 585 OPS
There you go.
against left-handed pitching last year. It was kind of a down year for Stott, so I think that's a great way to go about it is potentially just platooning him that way. And then, yeah, some days being able to plug him in for Bohm if you want here and there, or mix and match. But the interesting thing is we're talking about like a platoon of Castellanos and Kepler, but the way it's kind of set up now though is
Is
I'd imagine Kepler's just going to play left field every day, and then Castellanos is going to play right. I
yeah.
think the best foot forward would be cutting into the Castellanos ABs, but how do you do that? The only other way would be Kepler, and then you could do this against tough right-handed pitching. Kepler in one corner, Marsh in the other, and then Rojas in center, which would be a defensive upgrade, but
Yeah.
then offensively wouldn't be much better. So they do have options though if Castellanos is just not looking great, but we might not end up getting the platoon like that. We might end up just getting Cassiano still playing every day in right field, and it is what it is. But at least Kepler and left, I think, puts them in a better spot and elevates, I think their potential a little bit.
So I don't think that they're going to do this before they report for spring training. But can I just take you inside my mind and figure out how to get Luis Robert in Philly?
Yeah, yeah. Well, apparently the value is not too high there, right? Like I think people are like kind of surprised.
Yeah, let's get really creative here. And this involves cash going from Philly to the White Sox. The White Sox, what is their primary deficiency besides the offense
Everything.
entirely? Yeah, everything. Their primary deficiency is Jonathan Cannon is their opening day starting pitcher. And it's not like they're trying to compete, but if they can get prospect capital and take on a shitty contract, I think they could be kind of interested in that if Philly eats the majority of the money. I want to figure out a way to get Taijuan Walker off this baseball team. And I think that there's a way to do this.
Okay.
Taijuan Walker is essentially on a 2-year, $36 million deal. He makes 18 this year, he makes 18 next year. Taijuan Walker, $22 million cash. So the White Sox would be inheriting 2 years for 14 mil. They also give you Justin Crawford and Devin Saltaban
Okay.
for Luis Robert.
So how much money are the White Sox eating
The
of
White
Taiwan Walker?
Sox the White Sox would owe Taijuan Walker effectively 2 years, $14 million. But they would be getting Justin Crawford and Devin Saltaban as well. 19-year-old shortstop that had an OPS near 800 in the lower levels in Saltaban.
And I
And
mean
Crawford, I think a lot of people know about.
For the Phillies, just even clearing up every million counts because they're paying tax penalties
Right.
on
It,
all of
it's
it.
it's it's spending or it's paying 22 to not have him on your team instead of paying 36 for him to take up a roster spot.
And he's such a lost cause at this point that like it's worth it.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a warm body for the White Sox
Yeah,
though.
like
Just like
it's
if
either him or, another guy that's made 4 career starts.
yeah, that when you don't want to roll out your young guys if they're not ready yet. I don't hate that at all. Like I think that should be the move if that should be the move in May or June if it's not looking good.
Yeah.
Or like if Brandon Marsh unfortunately goes down in spring training or something like that. Like that 100% should be the pivot move.
Yeah.
And I agree like if they can take off a few $1 million from what they, are going to have to owe this year, I like that. I think I want them to do it. It's just I think the way they're set up now, there's no way they do it before the season.
Yeah.
However, I think that is the exact way they should go about it come June, July, whenever, if they want to try to put, their best foot forward.
And that would optimize because you can create that Kepler Castellanos platoon. Marsh can play left, and Rojas is there as the fourth, fifth outfielder for a very fragile Luis Robert.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And that's the thing. So you are putting your eggs in the Robert basket, but you could survive if he is not, healthy, if he gets
You would
hurt.
just do what's on the roster resource right now. You would
Yeah.
just do Kepler and left, Castellanos and right, Marsh and center, and Rojas is the fourth guy.
I just don't understand how, I mean, Dave Dombrowski's done a great job making this team better and better and better. But I think a clear deficiency for this team has been Nick Castellanos in the corner outfield.
Yeah.
Like, and I love I love Nick Castellanos. One of my favorite
He
personalities
is
in
your
baseball.
favorite player.
He probably is. Like, dude, he is. There's so many minuses. What do you think his career outs above average is in the outfield? Just
I
the outfield.
mean, so far negative. How many innings or games do you have a sample for me?
So total innings in the outfield is 7,933. I don't know how that's going to help exactly how many
No, but
outs
I'll
above
go
average.
like just for the sake of consistently like compiling negative seasons, I'll go like negative 15.
No,
Worse?
negative 70.
Oh, I was so off.
He was negative. So he was -8 last year. He was -6 the year before that. -12 the year before that. And like whatever you want to go by, DRS last 3 years, -8, -9, -11. And it's not just like analytics nerd like doesn't watch game, just reading numbers.
It's
Watch him run in his clown shoes. It's
it's
crazy.
terrible. Yeah.
It kills me to say this.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
I still think his bat has value, and if he is, hitting for you in like in a platoon spot and you're not having him out there defending as much. I also think on the other side of 30, he's going to be 33 this year. I think it's going to help preserve him offensively. The guy can still hit. Like
Yeah.
it was a 109 WRC plus in 2023. It was 105 this past year. 29 home runs, 23 home runs, destroys lefties, like comes up big in the postseason, big clubhouse guy. I think he would understand if his role was diminished a little bit,
Yeah.
given that he's one of the worst defenders in the outfield in the sport, and he hasn't hit righties particularly well. I just think if the Phillies are going to put their best foot forward in 2025, I don't think it's Nick Castellanos playing right field every day,
Yeah.
and I think it's a little bit of Einstein's definition of insanity to do so again, because there's
Yeah.
only so many ways that you can upgrade this lineup when you're locked in on Schwarber, you're locked in on Turner, you're locked in on Harper. All guys I'm happy to be locked in on. The
Mhm.
one area where they had a little bit of wiggle room was, okay, well, you're locked in on Real Muto as well. Maybe we can move Bohm. And then it just didn't seem like that was going to work out for them to upgrade the roster.
Yeah.
So now looking at it, yeah, you addressed a corner outfield spot, but I think if you're looking how to just upgrade this roster from where it's been, it's got to be cutting into those Castellanos outfield reps and things like that. Like it's not. I don't think Schwarber was much worse than him out there, and it was like
No.
we need to get Schwarber to the DH spot. Part of the problem here, but I still think like that's something that they could figure out.
Yeah, I think so. And plan A for me is go get Robert and eat into that with that trade. Crawford, Saltaban, Taiwan Walker, and $22 million cash, which would pay down Taiwan Walker to 2 years, $14 million for the White Sox. Plan B would be grabbing a guy that I think is an upgrade over Weston Wilson and Cody Clemens as that fill-in corner outfielder. And I love the vibe that Weston Wilson has, and I love the vibe that Cody Clemens has, and I know that Philly fans love both of them. But there's a guy in Cleveland that has zero path to playing time that had a 900 OPS last year in AAA that can hold his own in a corner outfield spot, and he's going to cost you a depth starter. I'm trading Michael Mercado, who has zero road to starts for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm trading Mercado, who had a 207 ERA last year and about 70 innings in AAA, to Cleveland for Jonathan Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez would immediately be an upgrade in your bench corner outfield role, and he can go get it out there, not at an elite level because he is, hitter primary, but he can go get it at a league average level, I think. I feel like that is the I'm not going to lose a wink of sleep type deal that Cleveland and Philly would be interested in.
Yeah, I like that. I can get behind that.
So
That's
that
it. Because they're all righty on the bench except for Stubbs. And I know that the lineup is kind of lefty heavy,
yeah, and
um,
Rodriguez is a righty, so
but
it's okay.
but I think that's to that point I'm saying I think they want the lineup or the bench to be righty heavy because it's Schwarber lefty, Harper lefty, Kepler lefty, Marsh lefty, Stott lefty. So I think maybe they want the bench to be all righty heavy. So you'd effectively just be upgrading from one of yeah, I guess just upgrading from Weston Wilson at this point. Because
Yeah,
I think the way I'm looking at the bench right now is it's just Sosa, Wilson, Rojas, and Stubbs.
yeah,
So, yeah, and then if they wanted Clemens as another alternate in there, it's definitely an upgrade from there.
and he's a lefty. Like
He is a
you got
lefty.
you got options here. So that's my plan B to the Lubop thing.
Yeah, I think that's how they go about it, and I think they go into this year kind of status quo with the lineup, but ready to strike. But that could be the move that we make. That could be the one addition.
That's fine. You think Cleveland says yes to that? Like I see no path to playing time for Jonathan Rodriguez.
I don't think there's a more blocked guy right now than
Yeah.
Rodriguez with what they've got going on there, and we just try to lay out the whole offensive side of things and in the corners there, and I think they would just because Mercado's got some intrigue, man. 25 and full pitch mix of fastball, cutter, curveball, changeup. I think that's a guy that they'd probably love to tinker with and see what they could get out of him.
There's your boring ass move for the Phillies. Bullpen. I do think this bullpen needs one more reliever.
Yeah, yeah, I like Romano, I think is going to be better for them. I don't know how good, and I think he's still a little bit of a question mark. Strom is good, but I don't know if I fully trust him in like additional high leverage. I think Alvarado is a guy that you have to look at and say, I don't know if I trust him at this stage of his career and high leverage as much.
I think
Kirkring
they
is
have their
great.
closer. Yeah, I think they have their closer in Kirkring.
So I think they need one more leverage arm.
And
But
I
I don't
think
know if
this,
they have a ton of money to spend.
I don't think so. I think this could be the spot for Seawald to reclaim some of his value. I
Uh,
know that we've put him on a bunch of teams, but Seawald does kind of feel like a Philly.
and he should be going to a contender at this point. Yeah, I think Seawald is the guy to add here.
Okay. So we just added Paul Seawald and we just traded Michael Mercado for Jonathan Rodriguez. So
But we have a trade in the holster
yeah.
for Luis Robert.
And that was, our galaxy brain. That's Lou Bob coming for Justin Crawford, Devin Saltaban, Taiwan Walker, and $22 million cash from the Phillies. So the new look lineup is not very different. JT, Stubbs, Marshawn, Paul McIntosh is the catching, four. Schwarber's the DH. Harper is at first. Stotts at second. Turner at short. Bohm at third. Sosa filling in everywhere in the infield. Then the outfield. Kepler and Casti in the corners for the most part, with Jonathan Rodriguez filling in, and then Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas handling center field. The rotation is perfect. Don't trade Ranger. You're going six deep. Wheeler, Lizardo, Nola, Sanchez. Ranger is the five. Painter as six when you're ready. And I think that would be awesome for Wheeler, Nola, Lizardo, who's had, injury concerns. They can expand to six for the back half of the season and run
Yep.
Painter out there who's working his way back and building up after TJ, and you could have a six-man rotation. And this bullpen would be Strom, Kirkering, Romano, Paul Sewald in a one-year deal, Alvarado, Jose Ruiz, Tanner Banks, and my guy Devin Sweet.
I like it.
I
I
like
like
it a
it.
lot. Let's do the Mets here. And the Mets are essentially taking care of what they got to take care of. We don't have much to do. I would give you the payroll numbers, but frankly, it doesn't matter for them. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell you what they spent and what they might spend. Here's what they've done so far. They declined a club option on Phil Maton. Sean Manaea declined his player option, but obviously they just brought Manaea back at 3 years, 75. They acquired my guy Jose Siri, who's going to win an MVP if he learns how to play baseball, for Eric Orzi, the reliever from Tampa. They paid Juan Soto $765 million over 15 years. Still feels crazy coming out. Clay Holmes, 3 years for $38 million, are going to try this as a starter. They also signed Jared Young to a major league deal, one for $1.15 million. Lineup or pitchers first?
So the lineup, I say we go lineup because I think the rotation's probably mostly done. It would just be bullpen. So let's get the lineup going.
I would think so. So the rotation would be Senga, Manaea, Montes, Holmes, Peterson, and then Blackburn and Canning and Tyler McGill as depth.
And then Scott hopefully coming back at the end of the year with the internal
Hybrid, and
brace.
then we'll see what happens with Sproat and Tidwell too.
Yep, exactly. It's Sproat. I think Sproat, the command hit a wall in AAA, but I have a feeling he can end up being in the equation early in the year if that clicks too. So yeah, they're pretty good on the starting rotation side, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, lineup. Francisco Alvarez and Luis Torrens as the catching tandem. Do you want to do anything to
No,
enhance Luis
that's it.
Torrens or no?
That's it. I think that's where they want to be.
The infield. Vientos at first right now, Beatty at third, Lindor and McNeil. Acuna is the third middle infielder right now, and Jet Williams might not be too far off. We'll see how he looks in Syracuse to open the year.
They
We
need
got
more here for sure. Um, and I think you got to be like that. Everything has already the dominoes have all fallen in a way that I think puts Pete Alonso in a position where I don't think he can go anywhere other than the Mets.
I think
Like
so
even the
too.
Mets B offer to Pete Alonso, like not even their top dollar, I think is going to be more than what any other team that's left is going to offer him. Like who else is out there? What other suitors are there at this point for Pete Alonso?
Nobody. The entirety of the first base market just formulated
It
over the
kind of
weekend.
worst case scenario for Pete.
Absolutely. I wonder
And
if it drives the price down on him.
I think it has to because I think the only thing that was going to really drive the price up significantly, I think, for him was after kind of this wishy-washy year and then finished nicely, obviously, but was teams I think pushing the Mets, and then it was going to be how bad did the Mets want to bring him back? But I don't think teams are going to be pushing the Mets that hard at this point. So it might be shorter term deals from other teams at higher AAV, and the Mets can probably offer a longer term deal and guarantee more money. And I think that's ultimately what he'll take. So I think I think it's got to be a foregone conclusion that he's a Met at this point.
What does it look like contract
Mm,
wise? I wrote down 6 for 150, which is 25 a year.
yeah, like now that I'm seeing what, I mean, you just saw Nate Lowe get traded for a reliever,
And a decent one, but a reliever.
but a reliever. Um, like what is this position worth? I don't know.
Christian
Like,
Walker got 3 at 20 per. And Christian Walker is 4 years older.
mhm. I think he's getting what 27, 28 per in 7, 8 years. He's
What did
still
Nimmo
young.
what was Nimmo's deal?
Brandon Nimmo, that one was sneaky big. It was 8 years, 162.
Why couldn't that
You
Pete
want
might
more
garner a
AAV?
higher AAV.
Yeah, because I think whatever the contract initially was expected to be, I think it's definitely lower than that. And according to Jeff Passan, teams were hesitant to give him a long term deal. Like that's been the problem with his market. So I think like 6 years, it might end up just being like a 6 year kind of thing. Like he's not
6
even as young.
for
I don't know why I thought he was still on the other side of on the short side of 30.
No, I think he's what? Like he's about to turn 31.
He's no, he just turned 30, but
He
still,
just
I
turned
was
30.
like,
Okay.
I thought he was younger. Um,
I so
I don't
I
see him going. I don't see a team going more than maybe 5, 6 years at this point.
Yeah, so I think the Mets are just going to give him 6 and my initial offer would be 150. I think he can run it up to about 170, which is about 27 per.
Okay, let me
He can
think.
do that.
Five. So what was the exact number you said?
6 for 170.
6 for 170.
It's like 28 a year.
Yeah, I think that's about, and that might be a little rich, but I think that's fair.
It doesn't matter to Daddy Warbucks over there and
Yeah, I was gonna say like 6 for 160, 6 for 170, something along those lines.
okay, call it 6 for 165, split the
Yep,
difference.
split the difference.
I want to sign some relievers, but do you feel like this offense is now a finished product with Pete back?
So here's my question: they need some pitching depth still.
Mhm.
And now that you brought Pete Alonso back, you're sliding Mark Vientos back to third, which is where he should be. He's come
Yeah.
along enough defensively there. I know he had some lapses here and there. He works his butt off there, and I think he's come along pretty well.
Yeah.
They've been in on Bregman. That was a discussion. Doesn't really make any sense, I think. You're already paying McNeil to play second. He looked a lot better in the second half before going down.
Yeah.
Beatty is very, very excessive at this point now because you have Alonso at first, you have Vientos at third. Your DH spot is kind of clogged up by Starling Marte, but also your other infield rover is Luis Angel Acuna, and you just signed Jared Young to a big league deal,
Yeah.
which was, I mean, Young put up some interesting batted ball markers, and I think it was I'm trying, was it the NPB? It was the KBO. It was the KBO.
KBO.
But it's just another corner infield guy. I feel like the Jared Young signing almost made me feel like we might be seeing Beatty get moved. And I can't believe. Can you believe that? Could you imagine if you clipped that sentence and sent it to us 2 years ago? What we like, I think the Jared Young signing makes Brett Beatty even more expendable.
It is hard to
What?
fathom, and I was even thinking about it like bigger picture with more star power. Mark Vientos being objectively better than Brett Beatty makes Beatty expendable. We wouldn't have
Yeah,
had that either. I know
and
you
we were.
had a feeling for a long time that Vientos could be good, but Beatty was going to be awesome.
Uh,
And now
uh,
we're talking about not just Vientos, but Jared freaking Young.
Yeah, I haven't taken the Brett Beatty or excuse me, the Mark Vientos victory lap because I think
Yeah,
just baseball was the high guy on Mark Vientos because I also was exorbitantly high on Brett Beatty. So
right.
they cancel each other out there. I still think he can be good, and I think there's a lot of teams that could benefit from adding him. The the one move that I was thinking of before they brought Manaea back was Beatty in a larger package. I talked about this with Ryan Finkelstein, actually, our managing editor. Brett Beatty in a larger package to go get a Luis Castillo. But I
Yeah.
think that ship has probably sailed now when you add, Monte, or when you added, Manaea back to the equation. I think a move to the Royals still makes sense. And I talked about on the Royals GM episode,
Hmm.
80 to the Royals for some like solid pitching depth slash relief help, I think could make some sense. It makes all the sense in the world for the Royals.
Yeah.
Uh, but like I was even thinking about, is there enough pitching that, and relief help that the Royals can offer that make it worth it for the Mets as like a buy low on a couple guys? Like could a Carlos Hernandez, be of intrigue? It's a guy who has nasty stuff
Yeah.
that I think could be either a leverage arm or a swing man for them as well. Daniel Lynch all of a sudden looked like he could be an effective reliever there for them.
Yeah.
Like there's some arms that I think the Royals could move because I think the Royals are still going to spend more on in free agency and to address their bullpen and have some internal options now all of a sudden, and that rotation is fully filled out. Is there something that to be had there maybe? Because I don't know how like you could hold on to Beatty, and if he puts up 1,000 OPS for the first 2 months of AAA, does that elevate his value at all? Like marginally,
I
maybe.
don't think so. I
You already know
really
that he could
don't.
do that.
I don't see how there's too much value there for Beatty if he's performing in AAA because he needs to prove it in the big leagues, and I think that he's expired essentially his big league run with the New York Mets. So I like the Royal fit, and I think you could do it. I just think there would need to be this quantity over quality approach for Kansas City's return because their bullpen is so thin, and that's the clear cut deficiency for
Yeah.
the Mets right now. Which is why I look at another team that's kind of entering a rebuild and would like to bring on a guy with 5 years of team control. It's becoming more and more clear that Helsley's not going to be involved in an Arenado trade. So could you do Beatty to St. Louis for Helsley and Michael McGreevy?
I think Beatty and probably a prospect,
Beatty and a
but
prospect for
it's only
Helsley and
1 year
McGreevy?
of Helsley. It's only 1 year of Helsley.
But it's 1 year of an all-star closer that I think led the National League in saves last year.
I think
So
yeah, a Beatty for a Helsley and an arm type of swap, and I think that could actually make a lot of sense.
and McGreevy could immediately just go to Syracuse, throw 200 innings like he typically
Yeah,
does, and then
and
be
just be
ready to
wait.
go.
He can be what Mike Vassell was kind of supposed to be, which is
Yeah,
just that depth arm that you can plug in. Remember, like Frankie Montes has had a pretty rough injury history over the last few years. Kodai Senga, very banged up, will probably be on some sort of innings restriction. Manaea's coming off of the most innings he's ever thrown in his life.
yeah.
Like you can't have too much depth there at all. And you lost Vassell, right? So um, I like that a lot.
Could
I
it be
like that.
like
And
a
for the Cardinals, I think it's a no-brainer. You get control. You're going to move Arenado presumably anyways.
yeah?
And now you have this young, exciting infield of Mason Wynn. You hope that you can, it's not the best landing spot for for Beatty, given some of the struggles of some of the other guys. But it's on Beatty at this point. I always said, like, I think if he's going to get it right, it needs to be in a third party
Yeah.
hitting coach type of situation. But you have a fun young core here all of a sudden. That's I think puts them in the right motion heading forward, but isn't a full fledged rebuild where you're getting a low A, high A prospect. So I think that might be the move right there.
Do you think the Mets would need to add somebody else if you're getting Helsley and McGreevy back?
I think
My
probably just
eyes,
like a lower level prospect,
lower
probably.
level prospects. So my eyes went to a real sicko move, which would be including Parada in that as well.
Ha! I actually like that. It's a flyer for the Cardinals.
Yeah, they get him a little
Catching
bit
depth.
right. There's some catching depth in the organization there. Beatty and Parada for Helsley and McGreevy.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to do to this bullpen? I still think it's kind of thin.
I mean, that helps for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Just pay somebody
I was
else,
gonna say
like
like
pay
could you get them to
Jose
like
Leclerc.
Jose Leclerc? I'm trying to like who sounds like a David who sounds like a Stearns type of move here. Like I,
Free agent
it's
one
tough.
year.
Yeah, I think any reliever that we haven't moved put too much or any with like loose Brewers ties.
That's a good question. I'm searching right now. I don't see any of them.
Yeah, and
Oh,
for the Cardinals, there's really not much need for McGreevy at this point because they still have Grisefo.
Quinn
Liberatore they
Matthews
could
is
end up
there. Yeah.
reintroducing back to the rotation. Like they've got a lot of guys up there. Um, Hence is knocking on the door. Sam Roberts says I think better than McGreevy.
Yeah. TK
So yeah,
Roby is better than McGreevy at this point.
for sure, for
How
sure.
about how about a reclamation of James Karinchak in New York?
Oh, I actually like that. They like the reclamation projects. It's another reason why I thought for sure Alex Reyes was going there.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Let's get Mr. Karinchak, back on track.
Okay. So our new look Mets team is Alvarez and Torrens as the catchers, Marte is the DH, it's whatever. Alonso at first, McNeil at second, Lindor at short, Vientos at third, Acuna and Jared Young are the infield depth. Wow. Breaking news: Eloy Jimenez minor league deal with the Rays. Eloy minor league deal. Whoa. There we go. Nimmo is in left. Siri and Tyrone Taylor are splitting center. Juan Soto is in right. That rotation: Sanga, Manaea, Montes, Pederson, Holmes, with Blackburn, Canning, Tyler McGill, and newly added Michael McGreevy as the depth, and then Sproat when he's ready. And then in the bullpen, Edwin Diaz, Ryan Helsley, which is a sick eighth and ninth. James Karinchak, Reed Garrett, Daniel Nunez, Danny Young, Sean Reed Foley, and our guy, congratulations on getting married, Max Kranick.
Oh, they got married. That's
They got
awesome.
married. Yeah, Emma
Congratulations to him
Hens
and Emma.
Kranick now.
Love it.
That's what we
Um,
got, man. Any
okay.
take on Eloy to the Rays on a minor league deal?
No, no, no. And I know people are gonna do like watch him be great. Now I
Right.
don't know about that,
I
but
don't
we'll
think so.
see. I hope so for his
Yeah,
sake. I hope so.
yeah, it would be.
Yeah, nothing there, but I like it. I think that's really all they need to do, and it puts them in a pretty good spot. Yeah, you could talk about dumping Marte, things like that. I don't think they're gonna be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that puts them in a great spot.
Yep. I love it. Anything else you got, or are we sending people off to Christmas?
That's it. I have a wonderful Christmas, everybody, and great holiday.
Yeah.
And well, we'll talk to people before the new year. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just enjoy the holidays.
We'll talk on the Friday show, guys. Every link you need is in the episode description. Enjoy your family time over the next couple of days, and we'll talk to you then.